Большое спасибо. Теперь
Thank you very much. So now we can truly deem the third day of our conference open. Let us start AIJ Journey June 2021. And our first speaker will be the General Manager of Gaming, Creator and Esports sector in Intel, Marcus Kennedy, who will speak about the role of AI in gaming industry.
Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here. My name's Marcus Kennedy, and I'm the General Manager of the Gaming, Creator, and Esports segment here at Intel Corporation. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about AI in gaming for a few reasons that I'll get into here in a few minutes. But first, let me tell you a little bit about me, because the least important thing about me is that I lead a business. The most important thing about me is the stuff on this page. So the first picture at the top left is a picture of me and my small children at Halloween. That's me in the Black Panther outfit, if you couldn't tell, and my little ones that we got into comics just like me. If you couldn't tell by the pictures behind me, I am a huge comic book fan, and I've passed down onto my kids. And so every Halloween we dress up. That was a couple of Halloweens ago. This past Halloween, we were all Batman villains. And so it's just a thing that we do. At the top right, that's me and my wife. I always call her the Harley Quinn to my Joker. And that's what you see in that picture. Also a Halloween, just a couple more Halloweens ago. At the bottom left, there's another thing that is really important to know about me, and that's I'm a huge sports fan. And so I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. And so this is a picture of me and my family at an NFL game, a National Football League game of our hometown team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's me, that's my son, my brother, and my dad. We love going to football games, and I just really enjoy hanging out with my family, if you couldn't tell by the other pictures on this slide. But last, and I think this is really most important to understand a little bit about me and why I really think I'm in my dream job. That picture at the bottom right is me at a video game tournament. And that's because I used to be a professional video game player. In this case, I'm playing Smash Brothers Melee. For those of you who might know that game, you notice the GameCube controllers in our hands. And the person in that picture with me is my teammate. We used to team up, and we were top ranked in the world at Smash Brothers Melee. And I really like this picture because I'm super competitive. And this picture is the first and only time I actually ever beat my teammate in a singles part of the Smash Brothers Melee tournament. So I like this picture because it reminds me of that. And it reminded me of the time when I actually beat my teammate, who was a little bit better at me at the game. I also used to build computers to take them to tournaments to play a game called Counter-Strike, which you might be familiar with. And I also played Halo on the Xbox too professionally. So hopefully some of those resonate with you all. But the reason why I like to talk about that is because that, I think, gives you a sense as to why me and the kind of gaming and creator and esports space is really like my favorite job ever. And so I'm really excited to be here to talk about it with you today. And so a little bit about what got me there. So at the top left here, that's actually a picture of me as a baby. I was born premature, 2 months early, almost died. It was awesome, but I made it through, and so I'm here to share this with you today. But the thing that I'd like to talk about there is that I was born 2 months early, and so I was impatient even then, and I'm impatient now. And so what you see throughout my career trajectory is that impatience as a virtue, that desire to continue on as quickly as I can, to learn as much as I can, and just kind of accelerate and just get ready to move on to the next new adventure. And so the bottom left is my family, who's helped support me in that journey. You've seen my dad, my brother already in a different picture, and that's my mom in that picture as well. They supported me, and I actually went into college at Florida State University, where I got my industrial engineering degree. And so for all of you out there, one thing that I'll say, I'll pause here for a moment, is if you're in school now, or if you're planning on going to school, engineering is a fantastic degree and a fantastic discipline to go into, because it gives you such a broad range of things you can go do afterwards. As you see, I'm an industrial engineer. I don't do anything in industrial engineering anymore, and I lead a gaming business, and my entire career path kind of split away from industrial engineering, but it gave me a good foot in the door, thanks to the next picture, which says Inroads. Now, Inroads is a company that helps provide internships to folks from different backgrounds to get their foot in the door into the industry. And so through Inroads in that industrial engineering degree, I was actually able to work for Kraft Foods, which you see at the top right here. I worked for Kraft for 5 different summers while I was going through college. And then when I graduated with my engineering degree, I went to work for them in manufacturing. And so I grew up in manufacturing on the floor, actually making coffee and Capri Sun, if you know any of those, Maxwell House, Capri Sun, cheese, and those kinds of things. And it was a ton of fun. I got to learn a lot about processes. But what I really realized about myself back then, if you remember a few sentences ago, I told you that I used to build computers to go compete. I'm really a technology guy. My mom, when I was in 6th grade, came home with our very first computer. And the next day she came home from work to find that I had taken it completely apart and it was all over the floor because I just had to learn what made this thing work. Under threat of being grounded and getting in trouble, I had to learn how to put it back together again. And so that actually put me on the path of learning how to put computers together. And so that love of technology and putting computers together never left me. And so I actually left Kraft to come to Intel because I knew that Intel has this place in the ecosystem of being in the middle of technology to be able to kind of lead the PC ecosystem. And I really wanted to be a part of that. And so I came to Intel in manufacturing. I went back into engineering for a while. I moved over into finance so that I could gain a little more experience and exposure to the broader opportunities that exist at Intel. And then I wanted to get my MBA, my Master's of Business Administration, because again, I wanted to learn more. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm impatient, and I'm impatient to learn more and to grow. And so I went to Babson College to get my MBA. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever had because what it really taught me was that you could learn so much about the world and still have way more to learn. And so I got that MBA, and what that led me to do was to leave the manufacturing world and go into the business side so that I could really figure out how to grow a business with my new skill sets. And that led me into the data center, which led me into what we call the Internet of Things group, which is all about sensors and things like that. And that brought me into the position that I'm in now, getting to kind of marry my hobby with my job and lead the gaming, creator, and esports group. So as you can see, kind of a wide-ranging background, but I'm just happy to be here. So now let me talk to you a little bit about what I do and about the business and why I'm so excited about it. So, and why I came to Intel. So Intel really does power gamers and creators. There's a couple of things on this page I really want you to kind of narrow your eyes and focus on. First, when we say creators, we're talking about people, not just like social media creators who you might think about, who create content and share that with the world, but also people who create games, like game developers, or create things like engineering designs and stuff like that, stuff that I used when I was in engineering, like CAD and things like that. All of that is all of that is combined into that 300 million number there in creators. But there's also 1.4 billion PC gamers, really big number. And this is all of the people who actually game on their PCs. And so when you put those two numbers together, it's about 1.7 billion people who we touch with our platforms and these brands. When we launched our Tiger Lake H platform in the mobile or the notebooks and laptops, there were about 80 or so design wins. What that means is the brands that we put our processors into. And we shipped out about 1 million units, about 1 million processors out into the world. So these numbers are really amazing about how many people are actually taking what we make here at Intel and using them to either game or create. Now, these logos at the bottom of the page are all of the partners that we work with in order to bring these processors to market. So if you're probably familiar with one or more of these, right? So Acer, Lenovo, Dell, Gigabyte, HP, Razer, right? One of my favorite gaming brands. So all of these companies are companies that we partner with across all of these designs to actually bring them to market. Now, let me spend a little bit of time talking to you about what it is that Intel actually does, right? So if we think about what Intel does and what you need to run artificial intelligence on all of those systems, right? There's two really key things that Intel brings to the market. One is the central processing unit, which is the brain of the computer, right? It's the thing that does the most computing in order to run just about anything you do, right? The second piece of silicon that goes into a computer that we bring to the market is the graphics processing unit. Now, and a lot of times that GPU, that graphics processing unit, is actually integrated, what we call integrated, or included and put side by side into the same little box as the CPU. So that's called an integrated graphics processing unit. But there are also discrete graphics processing units, which aren't side by side, but actually are a different card or something you have to buy separately that sits right next to it. And then when it comes to really high performing systems, like a gaming system or a creator system, most of the time, those are sold with a discrete graphics processing unit. And, but the cool thing is when you put them together, when you put an integrated graphics processing unit and integrated GPU with the discrete GPU, they can do some really cool things. And that artificial intelligence has somewhere to go. It can either go on the CPU, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do on the CPU side. It can also run on the GPU, and I'll tell you a little bit about that here in a minute too. Sometimes it runs on both, but either way, the AI has to be somewhere. And even when we're talking about the cloud, these things in the CPU, the GPU exist in the cloud too. And so AI runs wherever it's running, whether it's local on the client, which is what we do in our business, or somewhere in the cloud, AI has to run on one of these two things, a CPU or a GPU. Now, Intel also makes other things besides CPU and GPU, like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and storage, like your Optane and some of these other things. But for now, I'm just touching on these because they're kind of the most important parts. Because all those other things really wouldn't exist or wouldn't be able to function without a CPU or a GPU. So now we actually just launched our newest CPU into the world. It's called the 12th generation core processor. You see the box here. I've actually got one right here for you to see. It's kind of cool. My daughters call this guy inside of it the golden waffle right here because it looks kind of like a waffle. It's actually a shape of the wafer. The way the processors are manufactured are in circles like that. And so then we chop it all up, and then that's when it ends up the way you see it as an actual processor. But the cool thing about this new CPU edition, it's both the world's best gaming processor, and it also has the best overclocking experience on the market. And one of the cool things then that we're able to do is then to have a giant leap for content creation with the performance that we were able to offer with this really cool processor. And so this is a really boring slide that we use to show all of the tech press out there. When they talk about our processors that we launched, they like to write up articles, and it's kind of cool. But they like to see these kinds of slides so that they can have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. To me, it's kind of a boring slide. Because it's just a bunch of words on the slide. But what I want really to focus on here is the red circles. And the reason I circled these on this slide is because these are really where the AI comes into place. And so there's 4 or 5 different areas on here I'm going to talk about here in a minute. One is the new Intel Thread Director. Really super cool thing I'm going to get to in a second. So I'm going to put that to the side for a moment. We have the overclocking I talked about. Well, guess what? We use AI to overclock. There's a one button push that you can use with our new overclocking system that allows you just to push it, and boom, it looks at everything that you're doing, looks at how you're planning on actually using your computer, and overclocks for you. You don't actually have to do anything. And we use AI in order to figure out how to do that, which is super cool. We have Intel UHD graphics, really just integrated inside the CPU. It has what we call 96 execution units, which just means it's a really powerful GPU. And it's integrated inside the CPU with what we call our XE architecture. And if you've heard, we're entering the discrete graphics market too, based on the exact same architecture that's inside the CPU. We're taking it out, putting it in the DGPU. And when we put those two things together, the integrated graphics and the discrete graphics, they can kind of play off each other and do some really cool things, especially through some AI. Now, if you go over to the right, the other circles, we've got something called Deep Learning Boost. And what that is, it's a really cool artificial artificial intelligence that allows you to look at what the system is doing. It looks at the workloads and the applications that you're running, like if you're running a game or if you're running something like Adobe, and it goes in and figures out, hey, I can use AI to actually speed this up, whether you're doing encoding or decoding, whether you're actually creating some content in one of those systems, and it speeds it up based on what you're doing, and it uses AI to do that. The Gaussian Neural Accelerator, GNA, what that does, we actually use it in the gaming space for something we call anti-toxicity. It's an application we call Bleep. You can Google it later if you want to look it up. And what we use it for with that anti-toxicity application is actually to speed up how that application runs when it's sitting on your system. So the GNA is a piece of hardware that sits inside the CPU and uses artificial intelligence to look at the application that you're running on the anti-toxicity, look at the AI that's trained that model, and run it faster and more efficient so it can run at lower temperatures and a little faster, like I mentioned. Really cool piece of hardware in a really good space where you see hardware and software kind of coming together. And then last, we've got something called Intel Killer Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. It's integrated into our processor on the desktop side. But the reason I highlighted this, even though it's hardware, is that we use software to actually take full advantage of the Intel Killer Wi-Fi components. If you have a killer system or a system with killer in it, there's a software application you can pull up, and it's got things like one-click latency accelerator. You can put it on game mode, and so it knows what you're playing or what else is going on in your home and really focuses your bandwidth onto the gaming application when it knows you really want to game. So all of those are really great examples of AI actually inside the processor, taking advantage of what's in the processor to make it run better. Now, let me go back to that Intel Thread Director for a moment. So one of the interesting things about this new architecture that we have with 12th generation is it's something we call hybrid, where we have two different kinds of architectures on the same chip. We've got something called performance cores, which are really, really big cores, the biggest core we've ever made, which is why it's such a really great product for the market. But we've also added another 8 cores of what we call an efficiency core or E core. So we've got 8 P cores and 8 E cores on the processor I just showed you, giving us 16 cores altogether. But they're different kinds of architecture, right? And they're meant for different things. The performance cores are meant for your really heavy workloads like gaming, and the smaller cores, the efficiency cores, are really meant for your multi-threaded applications like your creator applications. But how does your computer know where to put what? Well, that's where Thread Director comes in. And so what we did here was we put, again, something in the hardware that gives the operating system, Windows or Linux, a little bit more information based on what is happening on your system, based on what you're actually running. And based on that little bit more information that comes from the hardware, we feed that into the operating system so that it knows what to do and it knows where to put those workloads. So it takes, for example, if you're going to run a game, but at the same time, you're going to be trying to run and do content creation, you're going to be streaming YouTube or you're going to be doing something like that. It looks at that and says, hey, I really need high performance for that gaming workload because I really need the most performance for that gaming. I maybe don't need that as I'm streaming. And so it looks at that, takes the game and puts that on the performance cores and takes what you're streaming and puts that on the efficiency cores. Does the same thing with things like antivirus applications or Discord, for example, if you're going to be playing on using Discord while you're playing. And it figures out what you're using. Now, how does it figure that out? AI. We trained this piece of hardware that sits inside the CPU with an AI training model so that it knows what to do. And then it feeds that into the operating system. And even better, it gets better over time. Super duper cool, right? And it's a great example of the way we're using AI to take advantage of some really great hardware innovations as we're bringing this kind of hybrid architecture to the market. Now, what does that look like, and how do we kind of work with the ecosystem to bring this to bear? So here are a couple of examples. I'm not going to go through all this stuff on the slide, but you should probably recognize some of these logos, right? If you've played Hitman, if you've played something in Troy or Age of Empires, which is one of my favorite games, or you use any of the stuff at the bottom to create with. We work with all of these companies, the game developers, the productivity software folks, Adobe specifically, to optimize what they do through that thread director so it really knows knows what to do when you're playing or running any of these applications. And we use that to take advantage of this so that you as a user, whether you're gaming or creating or whatever, get the best experience. Now, I mentioned AI before and how we use that to kind of take advantage of all the stuff and of what the hardware has to offer. Well, we're doing the same thing with these ISVs. We go in, we optimize code so that the code for the game or for whatever application you're using takes full advantage of that AI, and it's trained the best way to be able to do what it needs to do to move that workload where it needs to go. So it knows where to put, so it uses the right core for the right workload at the right time. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to talk a little bit about here is esports, right? I've talked about gaming, talked about creator. Let me talk about esports a bit. Now, first, we know that esports is a national, but not just national, an international affair, right? I know I'm speaking here in Russia, so shout out for Russia Team Spirit here for winning the Dota 2 championship. It's a really hard thing to do, and so it was a great thing here to see this happening. But it's not only international through the Dota 2 championship, but we as Intel actually invest a ton into esports. We've been doing it for decades, for over 20 years, and we've grown up as a company with the esports space, including me as I was building Intel-based computers, decades ago to bring those to LAN tournaments. Now we're actually launching tournaments, whether it's Intel Extreme Masters, Intel Master Challenger, or Intel World Open. And to that point, let me run a quick video so that you can see what really Intel World Open and our partnership with the Tokyo Olympics really look like.
Welcome back to the Intel World Open.
We are finally in the regionals.
We've had over a month of competition here, and we've absolutely seen the ground shake.
Tokyo Verde realizing the boys, they're going to be the final boss of this gauntlet.
Everywhere you look, it's talent, talent, talent. Let's get going.
Realize to 10 out Maru.
What's he doing, man?
Look at Japan, this man.
No way, VCO. Can New Zealand make this comeback? They're going to have to score now, and they will.
New Zealand, they're just waiting on a mistake. They know what might come here, and it might be right now. It's going to be.
Today, we have Europe, Middle East, and Africa on the line.
Ferry to do it again. Germany pushing so hard, but Alpha's got to run it net, and he's got a second right into the top right corner.
He's going to get a pass towards the midfield. A very nice playmaker medal for Gregan there. Always work out, but he interfered very well. The shot from very big.
Moving into the North American region.
Sees Squishy, no Squishy's there, goes far post, Illusion, chips it back in, Squishy, it's off the crossbar and away.
Is the United States and repping his nation. Boy, oh boy, is he doing them proud.
The pinch, the shot.
That's esports, baby.
Perfect.
A treat to be able to watch the USA and Canada play.
Tomorrow is going to be when we're going to be crowning the champions.
Takes down Ooga Booga. It's a serious statement.
But certainly threatening are Indonesia looking to be. It's just Amphis. This second touch is gonna get another. Posery showing to slow play down around the field and then spell it. And can you smell what Torsos is cooking?
Space One, regional champions.
Not able to beat Realize. He's all on his own. He's got space. That's so dangerous. Realize 1-0. Realize goal was so long ago. Maxi towards the net. It's back on his LCT. It's still loose. Maru is not going to keep it up at Tokyo Verde. They are the champions of Asia mainland.
Realize you are a superstar.
That game one was almost inspirational.
I'm so happy.
The Intel World Open continues tomorrow, but that wraps up Asia.
Somehow Kados read that. That's a challenge that he jumps for. Many have tried and many have failed to unseat the kings of the European region. France, who win it again.
How good was K-Dub today?
I'm proud of him.
After this, Americas are going to find their champion.
Chicago, Garrett G, and it's wide again, but Chicago's got a free net. 1-0 USA.
Canada right now, they've got to get themselves back up.
Because it's still dangerous from the US of A. Garrett, it's again ricocheting off woodwork. Chicago, the US of A. They win the Americas regional final.
What's it like to feel as the winner?
It feels pretty good.
This has been the best way to end.
It's been a fantastic journey throughout the entirety of the Intel World Open. Peace and much love to you.
So I'm really excited to show that to you for a couple of reasons. First, it was the first time we were able to bring the Intel World Open to the Olympics in this way. Second is because we actually, this $250,000 that you saw in there that we were able to offer as prize pools was up for grabs. And it was supposed to be a single team that won it, but because of the pandemic, we had to actually go to regionals. And so we had to pivot and do all kinds of interesting things. But last, you might be sitting there wondering, what does esports have to do with AI? Well, I like Rocket League as a great example because first, I was recently streaming on EVGA, one of our partners, and I'll tell you, I'm not nearly as good as any of those people in there, and so it's really cool to see. But part of the reason I'm not as good is because all I play against are either online people or bots. When you play with bots, you know what that is? AI. And so people use AI to actually train for esports. And there's a lot of different ways that comes to bear. And as AI gets better, then people can continue to use AI to just continue to understand what people are going to do and predict what people are going to do to make it better to use for training for esports. And we're actually at the center of doing that as well. Now, one of the other ways that we use AI inside gaming is for gaming avatars. Now, what this shows is an example of someone using motion capture on just a simple camera, not any of those really kind of weird mocap things that you see on people's heads, just using a camera to use AI to track and move with what's happening on the screen. This is really important because in the future, right, as we go to VR or as we do different things, we'll be using AI to actually better represent avatars inside gaming. And I really like this because you get to see like the wink that goes there. You see the blinking, you see the mouth moving, and it's a little hard to see, but if you kind of lean in, you can see even the little smiles whenever the person on the screen smiles. There's tracking with the head, and all of that is AI based. So it's really, really cool to see how all of this plays out. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk here about is where else we use AI. So hopefully you see at least something that you recognize on this page, right? But I'll go through them. The top left, that's Shadow of Mordor, one of my favorite games. I love this game. But if you've ever played it, you know it's a single player game. Yeah, you can play with others as well. But single player, there's a whole world around you. It's called emergent gaming. And all that means is that the world is based on AI algorithms that allow the people around you to have their own lives independent of what you as a player are doing. And like in Shadow of Mordor, it's really cool because the orcs in this game actually fight each other without you, right? They have their own little hierarchy. They work together. They have strategies. They do all of those things. And all of that is AI based. If you look at the top right, each of these games also use AI, whether it's like The Last of Us, where Ellie in that game, your companion, has AI to allow her to move through and track you and have her own reactions to things and figure out when to help you and when not to, or when to hide. Or Call of Duty Black Ops or Far Cry, where the world and the people around you who you're playing against can also be bots. Or at the bottom left, where we talk about things like XCOM or Halo Reach, where the AI is used to drive strategies, which is super duper cool. And sometimes, I know at least with XCOM, it was really, really hard. And XCOM is one of the hardest games actually to play because the AI is so good that the strategies sometimes can catch you by surprise, even as a human trying to play against a computer. Pretty cool. And the last thing in terms of the art of the possible, right? So this is a great example of somebody, not the developer themselves using AI, but somebody else coming in and creating a mod, a modification to the game that they used AI to actually make the game more photorealistic. And so on the left, there you see the normal GTA 5, which looks great, right? The graphics look awesome, right? On the right, they used AI to turn it into reality. And so what you see here is AI algorithms translating what's in GTA 5 into a photorealistic version. Super duper cool, and just gives you a sense of kind of what's possible, which brings me to the final thing I'm going to say, which is who knows what the future holds? And I hope that it's you. And so with that, thank you for having me. And I hope this was helpful and inspiring, and really looking forward to what you all create. Thank you.